Green Theater, how do I get started? So this is the first session in a 10-part session that we'll be offering in the 25-26 season. Because one of the main pieces of feedback we've received from people is that education is kind of like a place we need to start to be able to start making more sustainable decisions in theater. So this first session is really grounded in the mindset you need to have for sustainable theater. We're just going to maintain eye contact
Yeah.
this whole time.
Are we gonna reference Dom at all or no?
He is there.
I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
Hello, guy here.
Our live studio audience.
Yes.
So this session is being recorded. This session is being recorded so that you can reference it later if you want. Oh no.
There.
Okay.
Is it? Yeah.
So before we get started, there's a couple thank yous that we do need to acknowledge, because it took a lot of planning to get these 10 sessions together. The Theater in the Round is the first thank you because there are site hosts today for giving us space to be able to do this and meet. I also want to acknowledge that kind of throughout this whole series, I'm just straight up copying like images and screen clips from Theater Green Book and the Sustainability Production Toolkit because I want you to read and use those resources. So we'll be acknowledging them a lot in this session. I also want to thank Theater Pro Rata for helping develop this kind of structure and this kind of educational approach to sustainable theater because I've worked with them for the last year to kind of develop this structure. With all that,
Who are you?
who am I? I've already been talking for a little bit. So I'm Sadie Ward. I'm a local artist and theater artist, kind of specifically in set design in the Minneapolis area. I have degrees in theater studies, arts administration, and arts administration from Viterbo University. I also have an architectural drafting diploma from Minneapolis Community and Technical College. I helped start the chapter of Minneapolis Green Theater Alliance. I helped co-found Next Stage, and I'm a theater specialist at Schuler Shook. And also joining
Just jump in.
also joining us is Lucas Granholm.
Hi, yes, I'm Associate Professor of Theater Arts at the University of Minnesota Morris, where I teach theater design, technology, and various other courses. I have an MFA in Theater Design Technology from the University of South Dakota, a bachelor's degree from the University of Minnesota Morris in Theater Arts. I'm currently the chair of USITT Northern Boundary. And I'm a freelance lighting designer, theater artist across the country, and formerly program director of the Minneapolis Green Theater Alliance. And I jump in whenever
I'm like, Luke, show up.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, this session is really focused on the mindset shift that you kind of need to start your sustainability journey with. There's lots of resources out there that'll tell you like, start with an audit and start with benchmarking. But I think that there's a little bit more kind of framing work that needs to go into it before you jump right into like, let's audit stuff. And also part of this mindset is like, every region is different and every theater is different in terms of like what sustainability looks like and means to them as a culture. So there is no way that I can just give you a checklist or a silver bullet to be like, congratulations, you're now sustainable. Because like so much of our world has changed, right? Like even compared to 10 years ago, our awarenesses of sustainability and just like climate instability have changed massively. And so I approach this from the point of view that in 10 years, we're going to know things that are totally different. So if you approach this with like a mindset of like questioning and interrogating, you're going to have a stronger approach to sustainability in the long term than me just saying, make sure you're recycling your cans.
Yeah. Well, and I also think to add to that, I think that what we're doing is something we've all theater designers have done for years, right? Like we're always I don't use big borrow steal, but like we're always borrowing, lending, we're always trying to do things as efficiently and cheaply as possible. It's just we're just kind of putting it now in more of an eloquent like package.
I also think of it as terms of like it's your starting intention, not a happy byproduct.
Yeah.
Like if you start with sustainability first, you're going to get different long-term benefits
Mhm.
from it. And I know for myself, I like, so kind of like in that like beg, borrow, steal,
Yeah.
I know that I had like before the pandemic always tried to have like intentional or like, oh, this is a whole element, I can recycle it. Like
Yeah.
I did a like a whole wine bottle wall for a show where I'm like,
Mhm.
guess what? We get to recycle that
Yeah.
afterwards. And it was really like the pandemic and in 2020 when I started to really think intentionally about this. You've been thinking intentionally about this.
Since for 2010.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you teach this at
Mhm,
Morris.
I do.
So
Shout out to Morris. I should thank them for this too.
oh well, thank you,
Thank you,
Morris.
thank you.
So I that's kind of like my plug for, you can start this journey at any time.
Mhm.
And also that like first step in your sustainability journey can be different for everyone. It can be like little baby steps, or you can be like, I am doing it and take a big leap in that
Mhm.
direction. As I mentioned, kind of throughout not only this presentation, but the 9 other presentations to come, I will be and like very intentionally mentioning the Sustainability Production Toolkit, which is a PDF and a resource that exists that anyone can just go out and find and read. It's free. Go do it.
Maybe when we post this, we'll link to it.
That and also session 2 is like a presentation just summarizing major like resources that exist. So
Just
I will,
follow up for the second one.
yeah, so like we'll include the links, but also session 2 will be a like, I've read all of these things, and if you only have time to read one, I will give you the bullet point list of the pros and cons of each thing. Also, the Theater Green Book is a really great resource. This is a little bit more focused in the UK, so things are in the metric system, which might throw some people, but it has a really great framework for approaching sustainable theater. So, Green Theater, how do I get started? So kind of back on this slide, because the Theater Green Book kind of starts with 5 broad: commit, establish a green committee, action plan, data plan, and communication plan. We're before all that, right? We're at before you commit, right? We're talking about the mindset that you need before you commit to this sustainability journey. Just like I know the things and experiences I've had in the last 5 years of being like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And then being like, oh my God, this is hard. Why am I saying that
Yeah.
this is a thing I am doing? Because it is very hard to like retrain how you've been taught to do theater.
Yeah, it's the diagram of good, cheap, and fast doesn't apply to this.
Yeah.
I mean, in certain ways, but like timelines have to be changed. And I think that's the biggest first kind of step when you're thinking about that.
Yeah, and a big part of this is inherently also change management, right?
Mhm.
In the micro and the macro, because whether you're approaching this as an individual, there's certain things that you need to like think and say for yourself. And if you're bringing it to an organization, there's different things that you need to acknowledge, like you're instigating change. So like change management is an official topic.
And as you know, as everyone always says, change is easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Humans love change.
Yeah,
They're
everyone
really
loves
good at it.
It's really comfortable.
So I think it's actually really important to first acknowledge the emotions that go into it, change, because like humans evolved emotion for a reason and like they exist, right? And sometimes your emotions can just be a thing to deal with, like with a topic like this that is we're talking about change management, but we're also like acknowledging a very large issue,
Mhm.
right? And we're trying to think of how like our day-to-day actions like roll up into this overall issue. So like one of the first emotions that you might experience is being overwhelmed, which I think we've probably all had moments of being overwhelmed when we're thinking about um climate instability.
For sure.
Um,
As we are now, Sadie and Dom and I are also in an air quality alert right now. So it's topical.
yeah. I know I have very overwhelming experiences when it's an air quality alert kind of day. But this might also be overwhelming for other reasons too, because like I said, for a lot of people, you like learn how to do theater. So it can feel overwhelming to feel like you're unlearning specific aspects of theater potentially, of like, this is the best, like I was taught how to put a flat together in this way. and then be kind of like going through that process of like, is there a different way to do this? It can feel very overwhelming.
Yeah.
I say flat because my background's scenic.
Yeah.
I will always have that bias.
Yeah, no, but I think it's also just in terms of just, I think a lot of what we're kind of talking about is I think in theater was inherently a little more sustainable pre-internet
Mm.
because there was a lot more of what we were doing was like working more locally, right?
Mm.
Now it's a lot easier to, it's so hard to break the habit of like, I can just find it online
Yeah.
and buy it for this prop. or,
Yeah,
you know.
and not know anything about where it came from, how it's made, and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. I think another emotion that comes with this journey can be guilt. Because I know for myself, when I started thinking of like scenic design specifically, in terms of like, I have a lot of influence over how this is made. I know I experienced like waves of guilt of like, oh my gosh, I built so many sets that have like ended up in the trash.
Mm.
And I think guilt can also come from this like feeling of like not doing enough, like especially as we're sitting in an air quality alert, like feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough to impact change and
Yeah.
how this is impacting the environment.
Yeah.
I think is a very real feeling of guilt.
And the guilt also goes kind of hand in hand with like burnout in
Mhm.
certain ways because it's like you know there's a lot of times not structures in place to recycle your set, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, but there's a dumpster behind the theater,
Yeah.
right? And it's just like I'm so tired of the show was a hard push,
Yeah.
and it's like, can we just be done? You know what I mean? Like it's that's also something like the guilt of just like I'm just so tired, like trying to like take care of yourself, but then also like it's again, well, I add to the slide later. It's like you just make it really hard to not,
Yeah.
you know,
And
to not recycle.
this topic of like burnout and kind of human sustainability is a topic in and of itself that we'll be discussing in depth too.
Mhm.
I'm just plugging future
Yeah.
sessions. But yeah, so I think guilt can also manifest itself in the form of like, I should have started this work a long time ago. And I'm a really big believer of like, whenever you start is great.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of things happening in our lives and it can feel like, oh my God, this is now another thing I have to think of. But when you start to think of your to-do list with a sustainability lens rather
Yeah.
than another item on the to-do list, it will inform how you go about your work and do your work. And I think that like these emotions, like if you're doing this with a group, are really important to acknowledge with the group up front.
Mhm.
Like, because if you're with a group, you might have a range of people experiencing emotions in like different ways, right? Because you might have someone that's feeling overwhelmed, but you have someone else that's feeling guilty. So like whether you're doing this individually or as a group, I think there's different ways that you kind of need to like acknowledge
Yeah.
that group feeling.
Yeah. And I always tell my students too, it's like, you know, you have to give yourself grace if you can't, like, you know, starting, there's a thing you said a long time ago that you keep circling, like, you always say you can't eat an elephant in one bite.
Oh yeah, I do like saying that.
And you know, one of the things that I tell students is like, you have to give yourself grace because theater is a monument to compromise.
Mm.
So it's like you have to kind of like, you know, when you're starting this out, you're not going to fully do it right away, potentially, right?
Right.
It's like sometimes like we really need this prop for this reason,
Right.
and we just have to buy it, right? We can't source it or recreate it, you know.
Yeah. I think while we're also talking kind of about the emotions that go into this sustainability journey, reminding ourselves why do we care is important because I feel like grounding yourself in that like positive emotion place. Like if you know why you're doing something from like a positive point of view, you're more likely to do it. So it's always going to be because I have moments like that where I'm like, why am I doing this?
Well, it
Like,
helps alleviate empathy fatigue,
right.
in a big part of it.
Yeah. Because I think that empathy fatigue is like very rampant in our
Yeah.
industry too. And I think why do I care also grounds us in like some of the like lived experiences that we now have too.
Mhm.
Because like I think of like I worked at a greenhouse and like the zoning for Minnesota has like officially changed, right? Like we've officially moved to a warmer zone.
Oh
Like,
yeah, our growing, yeah, we
yeah, our
switched.
growing season has like in my lifetime I can say I've seen change,
Yeah.
right? And also like one of my big personal motivators is the air quality days
Yeah.
because I have asthma, so it's like
Yeah.
literally hard for me to breathe on these days and I sound like I'm sick,
Mhm.
but I'm not. I'm just affected by air quality. So like these are all the things that like motivate us with our like individual and personalized reasons. Um that like that personalized reason is like one approach. Another like thought of like why do I care is the topic of environmental social justice, right? Because a lot of people don't think of sustainability in a social justice
Yeah, and they're
lens.
directly correlated.
Yeah, because we know that the people that are generally most impacted by climate change are the people that have the least ability to make change on these things. So for some of us that are sitting in these positions where we can be making change, and you remind yourself that like this, I'm doing this for a social justice reason. I'm not just doing it to fill air.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I'm doing this because I want to be putting less in the landfill, less in the incinerator, so it's creating less fumes and chemicals and such, so that it's helping someone else's life, even if I haven't met them. Um, and I also like a big grounding thing for me is like thinking how theater is like an art form where the medium is actually made of people, right? Like this gets into the whole like, what is theater? Is a theater production a theater production if you don't have actors? And like thinking how like we're also telling these stories about like human experience, like it's kind of hypocritical to be like trying to teach people about like emotional empathy through theater, but then not be taking care of humans in the process in terms of like not treating humans well in just like a work setting, but also like putting things in the trash that will negatively impact people. So, why do I care? That's a big one that you can define for yourself. These are just a couple of common ones that I've thought.
I think it's important. I mean, this is true with any creative work in general, is like, you know, you're gonna ask yourself like shifting your perception and workflow, doing things sustainably, you're gonna have this, maybe not blatantly, but subtly, it's just like, ugh, it'd be much easier if I just bought this.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, you know, you have to find inroads that motivate you specifically to each project. Right?
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it too, and this is a top-down thing, is, you know, the structure of how, as myself as a theater educator, I'm trying to change is like uh, directors have to also be flexible with that. If you're doing things sustainably, you know, you can't give exactly what they want sometimes, right? And so it's a production team shift mindset too, which stay tuned for more of that stuff.
But yeah, again, kind of in this kind of like emotion mentality setting, reinforcing the positive versus the negative is always going to motivate you further. I tell people frequently, like, even if you just make one different choice in your production, you've already made one choice that you can then adopt for your future productions. I like to give the example of a production that I did that involved aerosol hairspray can. And I was doing the set, the props person came to me and they're like, which brand of hairspray would you like? And I was like, actually, can we find like the can that like looks like the aerosol can?
Can or
Yeah, but it's not actually adding aerosols into the environment. And on that production, which is a very traditional approach to theater, that's what we did. So instead of 30
Hairspray, was it the show Hairspray?
No. But wink, wink, nod, nod. But that was the one thing then for a production that had upwards of 30 things in it. That's 30 opportunities that we did not add aerosols in the air, which is like very minor in the grand scheme of things, but it was a positive choice. And for that show, that is the choice that I held on to of like, this is the positive choice that we made. So reinforcing the positive versus the negative will always motivate you to then make the next positive.
And the other thing too is like I add to this is like, this is my manipulative way of handling it in my shop, is that I make it really hard to not recycle in the sense of like I have recycling very accessible within like footsteps of my shop. And so like once you start kind of ingraining that, and Morris has so many recycling bins, and we compost too, so like those bins are everywhere. And then when I've worked at other universities that don't have that, it feels so naughty to just throw away a can. Right? Once you ingrain that habit, then it's like, oh, it makes it really hard to break that habit.
Right.
And like I said, once you making the change and then changing back, it's harder.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that was kind of like the first part, which is like acknowledging emotions,
Mhm.
emphasize the positive, not the negative. Now, these are a couple considerations of like some broad assumptions that you can start to acknowledge that we need to unlearn these things. So straight up stealing from the Theater Green Book.
Mhm.
They also agree that we need to think differently in terms of like having a flow chart of like starting, with, kind of the given assumption of like, I have said I need this thing in this production.
Mhm.
And like traditional theater, you would just do what is asked. But like, I think really asking the question of like, can we actually do without this? Like, is the story actually necessary to have this, whatever you've requested, to have it happen? So kind of like working through that different way of thinking instead of just automatically saying yes. Is kind of like that first acknowledgement of like, yes, I will think differently.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's like there's also things. I mean, it's easier with new works, but like when I always think about these kind of like this kind of flow chart, it's like shout out to American Broadway theater now, where if you think about, I use Mary Poppins as an example, the musical, where it's like I had to build a giant bird cage for the evil nanny to be taken away. A giant bird cage that's on stage for 30 seconds. It's like, was that essential to the story? Do we need that?
Yeah.
So thinking about productions as that whole too. I always say scripts sometimes are more suggestions than recipes.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's what also puts us as like storytellers in the position of also saying like, is this actually the best way to tell the story? Is it like actually through this singular mechanism, or is there a different way to achieve what we're trying to do? Time. This is one that we've talked about a lot. Theater is always inherently in a time crunch, it feels like. You could always do more with more time. With sustainability, you do need to kind of start to think of time differently.
Yeah, it's not a linear line with theater and sustainability.
Yeah. And I think particularly if you're going, because again, there's lots of different ways to interpret sustainability for your organization. But if you're doing approach, which we love doing, which is like collecting non-traditional materials to build a thing, you need to like give yourself more time to do that. You can't just kind of decide like 3 months prior, like, oh, this will be a sustainable production.
Yeah.
Like it needs to be part of the core planning.
Yeah. It's a big part of it when we do green theater at Morris, where it's like I make piles, right?
Piles are your
I
friend.
find interesting objects, like especially like big, like if there's like 1 year we did Midsummer Night's Dream as a sustainable show, and we put out a call for donations of collections, and someone gave us 30 bowling pins, and so then the mechanicals in that production, we changed the concept. They were part of a bowling team, and then we started adding all those into the set. And but when you're thinking about that though too, is like the piles and like one of the things that when I talk about green theater is there's two parts to it in an educational standpoint, where it's like inquiry-based learning, where it's like you're experimenting and playing. But then I also tell students it's like the operative word of what we're doing in theater is play.
Which you taught me that, and I say that all the time.
Yeah. And that kind of that cycle, but that takes time. Going back to this, sorry, I segued. But altering and building materials takes time, right? And especially now with the internet, it's so much easier to just quickly get what we need exactly. But like,
yeah,
and like that's such an apple dangling. That's an easy grab.
Yeah,
fruit. Yeah.
Yeah. I think another assumption to kind of face and reframe is that sustainability is a part of the creative challenge. It's not opposed to it.
Or opportunity.
Yeah, this is another phrase that I stole from the Theater Green Book. So go to the Theater Green Book if you want to learn more about this phrasing.
Yeah.
But I feel like you kind of just touched on this with that bowling pin example in terms of like, you got this thing and then you incorporated it in that. I know for myself, when I'm knowing that I'm doing a more sustainable design compared to a traditional design, to me, that's also part of the storytelling as well. In terms of like, it is forcing me to think differently about like, how are my materials helping tell the story? And so from a scenic design point of view, at least, that is like one of the things that I will always then start to question in terms of like, what is going to be the material that helps me best tell this story.
But it also creates when you're curating and creating piles and like again this thing about there's a good back channel on like when you're creating like using all this time to collect stuff, it also creates community buy-in to your production of people that might
Mhm.
not necessarily so it benefits you at the back end of more butts and seats because
Mhm.
people are like I helped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we're talking about like gathering and hoarding things in piles, like it is important to acknowledge that your space, like the venue that you're working in, or maybe the space that you don't have really informs that too. Because I think being really grounded in terms of like what venue and what storage that you have, like is part of that. Like, don't overpromise yourself something if it's like this is the space we have to work with, and like if I exceed this space, I now create different challenges for myself. Because it is just a very real reality that the venue that you're in will inherently dictate a lot of your choices that you
Yeah.
could make. Which sometimes can be, this is
Yeah.
this is where I'm at, this is the situation I'm in, and I acknowledge that. And sometimes it can be like, I don't like this situation. Maybe I should be thinking of a different venue or a different storage situation.
And I mean, as a lighting designer that pretends to be a scenic, I'm going to say it's okay to use stock sizes.
Oh, I love using stock sizes.
It's okay. I think there was a generation of professors that were like, you need to curate the set exactly to like what you want, but you can use a 4x8 flat.
And that's
It's fine.
actually kind of like the history of design, designing with disposal in mind. Another session coming up is, acknowledges that like the history of theater design
Mhm.
and like the history of it started with opera houses. It's like you just had a forest drop,
Mhm.
you just had a city drop, and that just is what you used. And how design has changed over time. That like instead of using stock sizes, I love using stock.
And this just occurred to me.
Mhm.
Shakespeare was really the original sustainable theater design, inventing spoken decor, just like describing the set instead of just not even having a set, like and letting the audience imagine it.
Mhm.
What a forward thinking sustainable artist.
But also like what a way to just like trust your audience that they're along for the ride.
Mhm.
Right? Like I think movies have really conditioned us to like feeling like we have to see everything, but it's like part of the fun of reading a book is like, well, this is how I imagined it in my head. That's not how you imagined it. Like that's what imagination and
Yeah,
creativity
and
is about.
and that's why like when you're this kind of ties into space. I'm going rogue, say you didn't talk about this. But like if you're working in a theater that doesn't have stock or doesn't have space for it,
Mhm.
relying on a really strong lighting designer. Like
Mm.
light's a very powerful medium that can be very sustainable.
Mhm.
And it's like myself as a designer, I design my sets around lights.
Mhm.
Like it's I always say like a unit set, it's a sidewalk with a bunch of cracks and then lights fill in all the cracks.
Oh, I like that now.
Yeah. So thinking about that, like relying on other people on your team, it doesn't have to be just the scenic.
Mhm. Yeah.
That
I mean, that's kind of the whole point of this, of like, this is not just for designers to solve too,
Yeah.
right? Like we'll get into that,
Yeah.
but we speak from that because that's also
Yeah.
our perspective. Budget, because this is frequently a question that comes up for every theater is how are we paying for this? I find that when I lead with sustainability first, it usually long-term helps the budget. Because when I start saying yes to the sustainable choices first, I find that I have actually stretched the budget further. There is a little nuance to that in terms of like, there are definitely some sustainable approaches that will require more labor. So I think that that is something to acknowledge.
Budget also, I think in this conversation includes time, not just financial monies.
Right.
It's your emotional budget, your physical budget, your
Yeah.
mental budget.
Yeah, and I think that there's also like certain new materials that exist nowadays.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking of like that glue that I've used that is like biodegradable. Like that is not cheap right
Say
now.
say the brand so we can get sponsored.
We'll post a link.
It's not Elmer's, I don't think.
It is not Elmer's.
Sorry.
It has the word. I should have looked at this before I said that.
Oh,
It has the
Which
word
one?
earth in it. I know. We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
But some of those boutique materials do cost more at
Mhm.
this point in time, but it's like, but it is biodegradable.
yeah.
Um,
Then it doesn't clog your pipes.
yeah.
Like your paint sink isn't gonna back up as
Yeah.
much.
But I also say, like, if we start this conversation about sustainability and the first thing you do is panic about budget, like, acknowledge that, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's coming back to, like, acknowledge the emotions first. If, like, looking at the budget of things freaks you out, that might not be your first step
But I
into the
think-
realm of sustainability.
I think from an admin point of view, though, financially, like when Morris does sustainable productions, we always put out a call for people to donate materials. Like, do you have a bunch of denim, right? That inherently then creates community buy-in, which people are now going to be more inclined to go see your show, and more ticket sales in the back end.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Another like assumption that I just like to talk about is the idea that trash is convenient, right? Because it's kind of like that
It's everywhere.
mentality. It's actually everywhere.
Yeah.
But in your like immediate vicinity, it's like it's gone, so I don't need to think about it anymore. Kind of that out of sight, out of mind, but like not really, because now it's just gone to someone else's land to sit in a dump or be
Mhm.
incinerated. So like a lot of times it feels convenient to throw something away, but it's like you're still contributing to a larger problem,
Mhm.
right? And so I did the Hennepin County has a waste management master recycler program, and that was really great because it really taught me this idea of like go visit your waste facility. Like if you put something in a dumpster, you should literally go take a facility tour so you know
You know what's
where that trash is going.
people that work at those places are fun.
They are. And they will also tell you like one time I found this thing.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating to go to your local dump.
But I think that that is like one of those ways of like breaking that trash as a perception of like if you literally know the facility where it's going, because like is it a landfill or is it an incinerator? Can you even answer that question? I know right now I feel like there's also a lot of trends of like you're putting the thing in recycling, but is it actually being recycled? Like that's another way to be like, what is convenience?
Yeah. And and again, from myself as an educator, I had students that were really throwing a lot more away in the garbage can in our like shop like scrap bin garbage can than they should have been. And so I stopped emptying that can and let it overflow and let them like my shop workers be in that trash to make them aware of it.
Yeah.
And so, that's the other thing too is, if you're at a theater and there's some pushback on it, like let's make us aware of what we're creating. Because if the trash is emptied every night, it doesn't seem like you're doing that much.
Yeah.
But
it adds up.
Yeah.
I think another like important thing to just state as we're talking about anything sustainability related is like sustainability never supersedes sustainability or safety.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what did I just say? Sustainability never supersedes safety,
Yes.
right? So like as we're talking about thinking differently, like this isn't like, oh, maybe we should use like 1x4s to build that platform. Like don't build something unsafe. Like
Yeah, I think there's a certain level of in terms of safety, like scenically, I think about when we're stock sizes are always good, like to start with safety and stuff like that. But reclaimed lumber can be tricky, right? Pallets, remember when pallet tables were all, and they're still kind of popular, but like I built this out of a pallet. Thinking about like, okay, was that pallet used? Did it store oil on it?
is it drenched in gasoline?
Is it drenched in gasoline? Is there like, and the thing, altering materials is a big part of green theater, right? It's sustainability. So off gassing. If I'm melting plastic to bend to a certain thing, what am I breathing in?
Well, because also like melting plastic like is a big educational thing because there's some plastics that you can melt with very little off gassing, but not all of them.
Or and it's those kind of things, or like, am I using again lumber that has nails in it, or there's all sorts of things. Capitalism has snuck a lot of fun chemicals into a lot of things.
Thanks, capitalism.
Yeah, and so thinking about, oh, this paint was donated. This is great. Let's reuse this paint. That's lead paint.
It's lead paint.
So thinking about, but safety, yeah, it's a big part of it. It's like, so, but I think also like there is times where I've done a sustainable show, I'm like, I bought lumber for it, right?
Mhm.
I need to buy lumber for it. But then thinking about it down the road,
Mhm.
right? If I keep this in stock sizes, I can reuse this at least defer it from
Mhm.
things like that. I think that's also something to think about in terms of mindset is like, you can think about if you have to buy something, if you
Mhm.
have to do something, thinking about it for 3 or 4 more shows out,
Yeah.
right? If you can, if you can leg your platforms with a stud wall method, which utilizes a lot less cutting, then you can keep these 8-foot sticks a lot longer.
Yeah. And I also think kind of like the reverse side of safety is sometimes safety can be a motivator for people making more sustainable choices too,
Yeah.
in terms of like using less harsh chemicals.
Yeah.
So,
And the thing I always talk about too with this is like, you can't, like, if you're pushing for safety, like harsh chemicals and stuff like that, the person that's abdicating against that doesn't look good on paper, right? Like, you can't disagree with safety,
mhm.
right?
Well, and it's also like it does like again, it puts things human centered again,
Yep.
right? Like we're telling like the message is like humans, the story is about humans.
Mhm.
Why are we putting humans in unsafe environments
Yeah.
around hazardous chemicals and things like that? Okay, so acknowledging that there's certain things that we have to learn.
Mhm.
There's certain things that we can now say to ourselves on a regular basis to help us with that unlearning and relearning process.
Mhm.
Because again, this is about the way that the framework that you like approach this with. This is our state of mind.
Mhm.
And it's really about kind of broadening our thinking
Mhm.
in a lot of ways. Like I think you become a more creative individual when you start going down this journey
Correct.
because like you have to literally solve problems differently than just being handed the solution.
Correct.
So-
It's a lot more. I mean, it's the term inquiry-based learning is what I use a lot, where it's like question and play and
Mhm.
experiment. And it kind of goes back to like the idea of like what excited us to be artists in the first place,
Mhm.
as opposed to just like, "Ugh, I need this. I'll just go on Amazon and buy it."
Right.
Right.
Because then yeah, it's not as exciting.
Yeah.
Get buy-in from the team because I know that sometimes like because I kind of think of shows now in terms of like, okay, this is more of a traditional approach.
Yes.
This is not a room of people that is like ready for this conversation about sustainability compared to like if I'm with a production team that is like, we are doing sustainability, that kind of buy-in from the team, I think is something that I learned early on of like, I'm not gonna like push down my own gas pedal
Mhm.
and like burn myself out trying to get people that aren't ready for this conversation to like force them along. It just makes it harder. So, but when you do get buy-in from the team, it helps like gain momentum.
Yeah.
And like that's kind of the point of collaborative art form, right? Is that you're coming up with different ideas. So when you all have that kind of like, yes, we want to be sustainable,
Mhm.
different ideas develop differently.
And these conversations have to start way before the first production team meeting,
Mhm.
I think.
Mhm.
I think that needs to be when the team is being assembled, that's when the conversation really needs to happen.
Yeah, like I am most excited when I can get a director that's excited about sustainability because I
Yes.
know that I'm much more likely to have that team buy-in
Mhm.
happen than me being like, let's do this thing in the
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah.
Because it's all about like sphere of influence too
Mhm.
and inspiring others because like I like to think in some situations where we're doing a sustainable production that people that maybe don't have the depth of experience of thinking time about
Mhm.
this that I've done that helps influence other people to then go to the next production and be like maybe we can do it a different way,
Mhm.
right? Maybe we don't have to do it that way. That's why like that's kind of the great thing about theater in some ways is
Mhm.
it's like such a network based thing that
Mhm.
like when you can get one team that can then inform other teams,
Mhm.
like that's what helps spread ideas too.
It's like a cold.
Cold thing. It's not even winter yet.
You caught the cold. Yeah, no, I think yeah, and I think creating that, but again, creating that environment, making it exciting to do it. I mean, it's like because it's just, you can fall into a grind of washing and repeating the same production team kind of like process.
Yeah.
And it's like, why is this fun?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's switch it up a little bit.
Yeah. And I do think that there are like formal approaches to getting like team buy-in in terms of having like a green team or a green captain. So like, again, depending on what the team dynamics are and what the philosophy of the theater is, you might be able to have some of those more formal roles that can help lead that team too. But I think it kind of varies
Yeah.
production to production. Life cycle analysis. So this is something that other industries are much better at, and we just steal their graphics.
Mhm.
So we like I always say that theater is an industry of prototypes. So when you're making a prototype, it can be kind of difficult to think through like the life cycle analysis
Yeah.
of like, so I've made this unique custom thing. What's happening with it after the production,
Mhm.
right? Because when we're moving fast in a production, this can be really easy to just not think of, and then you get to strike and you're like, trash or shelf, like,
Yeah.
So
And I think a lot of this, the hard part of it, as someone who does a lot of summer stock, this is a really hard pill to swallow in a summer stock environment. And so that's things that need to be think. And I think that's stuff that kind of like that's when we're trying to think about the life cycle of stuff, right? It's like, you know, when you're doing a 48-hour changeover into another show on a summer stock schedule, it's so hard to think about that because it's like you only have so much space and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But like again, so it's like thinking about how again early conversations of this. Like, okay, if we build this set, like we build a city in Rapid City, South Dakota, there's a skyline of New York City that is in every production that has a city in it now, because it's just like people spent a bunch of money building it, and then it's just been repurposed. But like the reason the first production that did it built it is like we'll use it a whole bunch. So we put a bunch of lumber into it, but we've been, you know, for 10 years now, it's every city skyline is the same one in Rapid City.
Yeah. I also think part of life cycle analysis is kind of understanding the difference between waste, recycle, and compost. This was a framework of thinking that I also got from the Hennepin City Master Recycler program. Because there's like a reality that like when something is truly waste, it is like not usable. Like you can't do anything else with it. Because I know with my Brart, I say many things can be recycled.
Yeah.
But you just have to take the extra steps to recycle them. We've just been conditioned to think, again, in that realm of like perception of convenience, like only things that have blue bins can be recycled. But many things can be recycled. We just have to think through what those steps are. And then compost is fun, but maybe not always the most mainstream life cycle approach to most theater.
Well, and the problem with compost too is it needs infrastructure to happen. And
Right.
There has to be a buy-in on that.
And generally things that are built for compost are not very sturdy because they're gonna compost. So like, but knowing that framework, I know helped me think of things differently. This is a term I use a lot, designing with disposal in mind. It's also an entire session that we will talk about in depth, plugging future sessions. I think that a lot of times with design, you're just thinking, I am designing the beautiful, most perfect thing. And you just don't think of what's going to happen to it afterwards. But when you start thinking from the first question of like, kind of like the city skyline drop thing that you described, like when you know that you have to do something with it at the end of the show, you start making very different choices up front in terms of like, how is it built? What are the dimensions? Like, is it going to come apart or is it going to live forever? Because if it's going to live forever, that's a different way of doing things than like, this only needs to last 3 weeks.
Yeah. I just did a production of Grease at Prairie Repertory Theater, and we had the car, you need the car, and that one car has been in every single production of Grease in South Dakota for the past 20 years.
Right.
Like no, it just moves around.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that
about that stuff like that.
That kind of like understanding of like it will just be given away because that is the best thing that can happen to it, I think is also a really intentional way to be designing, to acknowledge what is the disposal of this item, what is its life afterwards.
So. And I'm working at a lot of theaters now that sell their sets. Like that production of Grease is now a production of Marvelous Wonderettes at a high school right now. Right? So it's like, you know, thinking about it from the front end, as you built it, right? That set was built and designed to then be taken apart, fit in a truck, and go somewhere else,
Mhm.
right? So thinking about it from the front end in that way too is like, okay, we can repurpose, even if we
Yeah.
don't have someone buying it right now, like we can break it down.
Honestly, the like break it apart and put it in a truck is such a totally different way to think about design. Because I know I've designed shows where it's been like mid-design where it's like, what if this tours? And I've been like, oh, we should have started with that. Like
Yeah,
that is not
exactly.
that's not a fact to introduce midway.
Mhm.
But when you start to think of it in terms of like, I would prefer this to go on a truck, for example, as one thing that it can do after a show rather than put it in the trash. You think of
Mhm.
it very differently. Again, mantras we already know that we can lean into. I am pretty certain that the majority of people have been taught reduce, reuse, recycle. Like, just lean into those. Like,
Yeah, us
um,
millennials, I believe, that has been from kindergarten on. I heard that every
I
day.
think, yeah. Because I know that kind of like mentality of like reducing single-use items is kind of a core recycling principle as well. And I know I had the realization that like for most audiences, theater is a single-use item.
Mhm.
So when you start to think of like the thing that you're making as a single-use item, again, it's another way of like, we already know these recycling principles, right? So if I know I'm designing something that is someone's only going to experience once, like again, how does that then remotivate me back into some of these? Like, no, I am very motivated to design with disposal in mind because I know that people are only going to see this show once. Kind of a
And
thing.
I think it's important when you're thinking about off like single use things, like for in Stevens County, Minnesota, a recycling kind of program. I can alter materials to a certain, like painting cardboard. Like if you're using a bunch of cardboard and painting it, I can paint it to a certain percentage, and if I tip past that percentage, then we can't recycle.
See, this
So
is also a really good thing you bring up in terms of like some like know your waste management facility
Mhm.
because there's some places that just straight up won't take painted cardboard.
Mhm.
So you can't recycle even
So you have to
portions
flip
of
it into the color stuff.
well, you have to rip the
Yeah.
painted part off, but still recycle it. But that's also going back into like the know your waste management
Yeah,
system.
no, yeah, because every state county has a different ability. Like, what number of plastics can they use? Can they
Yeah,
recycle? That's
yeah.
a big.
Because like even in the metro area here, like I know that like Coon Rapids is known for taking a lot of stuff. Like they take styrofoam.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
isn't that's the other thing that's exciting about knowing where your waste is? You go, wow, whoa, interesting.
They also like I think have been I'm pretty certain this is Coon Rapids. I should check myself, but they have also talked about being able to accept black plastics.
Interesting.
Yes. You know, and that's why like again I say like things change all the time.
Mhm.
So like there used to be places that took textile recycling that don't now. So like knowing what are your recycling systems in your hyper local situation is really
Mhm.
important. Because I can't just say like, yes, every facility works this way. It's different at every facility. There's broad things in common, but you don't know until you actually
Yes.
know. Community involvement. This is
Ooh.
something that we've been touching on kind of throughout this. Do you have community support? Like that's a big part of sustainability is having
Yeah.
community buy-in. Because if you're like inherently doing theater that doesn't have the community supporting it, that's kind of a different challenge
And
inherently.
and I also think like no one doesn't not want this.
Mhm.
Is that double negative? I'm trying to like no one's ever gonna be like, ugh, like everyone I've never incorporated seen or no one's ever like, I can't believe they're looking for donations to
Mhm.
recycle, right? Like the communities want these kind of things, right?
Mhm.
And it's what an easy way for you to like buy into a production, right?
Mhm.
I keep mentioning that earlier in this talk is like, I put out in our student center when we do green shows, I basically put out a call for just like weird collections.
Mhm.
Like, do you have a bunch of things that you don't want of one thing and I
Mhm.
can repurpose it? But like, I put bins in the student center that's a collecting, like, if I'm looking for paper bags that week,
Mhm.
right? Then it just dumps in. And it's like, it's also just, it's free advertising in an interesting way too.
It's also got a great education component to it too, because
Mhm.
like if I'm doing an ask, because I did this in the spring for like blue jeans,
Mhm.
right? It gets people to think like, oh, you can do something different with blue jeans,
Yeah.
right? They don't have to go in the trash. There is a different outlet for these. Like there's lots of different ways that like, and community and sustainability is another topic coming up. So this is just the tip of the iceberg of like what community and sustainability mean
Mm.
together. But like theater is such a collaborative art form that it just like inherently,
Just bleeds into this, right?
yeah, it just like is such a natural way to be like, how involved is your community? Do they know about your sustainability story? How involved? Are they helping you with different aspects of
Everyone has a closet that's full of plastic bags. Everyone. Like, so if you're trying to, like, you know, like it's everyone has a collection, like what am I gonna, and like, ooh, I can get rid of these, you know, like that, and then makes people excited about your show too,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Yeah.
I also like to kind of like focus on what we learned in Frozen 2 from Anna when she said, just do the next right thing. Right. So we've talked about a lot of different aspects of sustainability and the mindset to just get started. And like, again, like a lot of resources out there are going to tell you, like, start an audit, have a strategic plan, and that can be overwhelming in and of itself. And I'm here to say, just do what you know is right.
Yeah.
Like if you are, 2 to 3 years away from having like a formal strategic plan or any kind of value statement, but you can do the right thing by, you know, approaching something differently, recycling something,
Mhm.
doing the extra step, go for it, right?
Mhm.
I don't want people to feel held back by not having a value statement to be
Yeah.
able to just do the next right thing.
Again, it's like no one is going to be like against recycling. I feel like history will prove them wrong.
I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like everyone wants to do the right thing. I think inherently as people,
Mhm.
hopefully.
Mhm.
And so yeah, no, I think that's great. I have yet to see Frozen 2, and now I haven't seen Frozen 1 either.
Well, there's your homework.
Yeah.
Sometimes the first thing is acknowledging I need education before starting on this journey. And that's what we're trying to do with this series because we kind of started, we had a little quiet period while we figured out what this education stuff looked like.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to have a more formalized education approach to this. There's a lot, and that's just what we're doing, right? Like in the next session, which is talking about other resources that exist, there's actually a huge community out there that has made very impressive documents that you can just find for free and read. So there actually is, a big amount of resources out there. And I also think it's really important for people to say, like, I'm not the only one that cares, right? Because like part of educating is knowing that like there's other people that also care and I can learn from their resources. So I think again, part of sustainability is also knowing your access point. So if something that we've mentioned even in this session feels too overwhelming, but maybe a different aspect of it has resonated with you, lean into what resonates with you. There's Green Dreamer podcast that I listen to.
Oh, fun.
And I remember that there was a speaker that said, even if you feel like you can't, like, no one can do everything, right? We know this. But if you know there's one thing that you can do really well in the sustainability effort, just like go with it, right? And then like just start making that the habit. Because small steps lead to big outcomes. Follow our events page for more events. And also like through all this, sustainability means very different things to different theaters, right? And I think that is, I think, an important thing to acknowledge because I think sustainability as a word has kind of become a fad word, and we know that greenwashing is real. So I think knowing like what does sustainability mean at this theater versus that theater versus me as an individual is, I think, a really important thing to acknowledge. And if you're interested, because as I mentioned, I've been working with Theater Pro Rata the last year to help them develop their sustainability value statements and what that looks like in practice. If you're interested in doing that kind of work, you can reach out to us at our Gmail. I would love to work with more theaters that want to do these topics more deeply, or you can just keep watching the next kind of 9 sessions and see if eventually you want to do that. And a big part of sustainability is like accountability too. Like who's holding us accountable? Is it just me? Is it part of our staff? So
yeah, and I think it's also important to note too, is just like, this can be hard for some people to shift how their processes go with this. And so while we want to hold each other accountable, we also need to give each other grace too for that too. It's like, sometimes it's just like you have to buy. It's like we had to change something. We had to buy lumber.
Yeah. But also like accountability can look so different for different situations and
Yeah,
scenarios
I think
too.
reflecting that you did have to change and like break your rule to a form of accountability and allowing yourself the grace for that.
Yeah. And that's it. We got through the whole thing
Feel free
in about
to
55 minutes.
email us questions.
Email us questions. Dom, do you have any questions?
Dom, do you have any questions?
No, what a great presentation.
Oh, thanks for coming to our podcast.
I'm definitely going to be coming back for future
Yeah.
episodes.
Thank you everyone that attended. Okay.